At CTA, we are a 24/7 operation, which means we are always moving people, connecting communities, strengthening our partnerships, and quite often, we make history. This summer, we reopened 4 Red Line stations in Chicago's Edgewater and Uptown neighborhoods as part of the largest completed transit investment to date in CTA's history, Phase 1 of the Red and Purple Modernization project. Already, more than 250,000 people have traveled through the newly reopened Lawrence, Argyle, Berwyn, and Bryn Mawr Red Line stations. For riders with mobility limitations, these stations aren't just reopened. They are completely new access points to our system and these neighborhoods. In this project, which we call RPM for short, over the past 7 years, our team has fully rebuilt the 4 stations I just mentioned, making them fully accessible to riders with disabilities, in addition to rebuilding a nearly 10-mile stretch of track that winds through several neighborhoods. This replacement of 100-year-old infrastructure has transformed the community and now stands to serve generations of future customers over the next century. In addition to being symbols of access and justice, these stations are absolutely breathtaking and stand as a shining symbol of what investment in public transit can produce. More than 200,000 people live directly in the project's footprint and could see this work happening from their windows the entire time. In addition to everyone who calls the Uptown, Edgewater, and Lakeview neighborhoods home, there were also roughly 400 small businesses that were impacted by this work in various ways. This $2.1 billion project was more than just an investment in the communities, because the entire Red Line, which serves more than a third of our 1 million passengers each day, benefits from the improved riding experience of the new tracks. Today, I've invited 2 members of my team who have been instrumental to RPM to share their stories about what it took to make history. Jeff Wilson has been RPM's Director of Government and Community Relations since the very beginning of the project. And what I love about his role, and specifically the passion and expertise he brings to his work, is that it puts such a clear and direct emphasis on why projects like this matter, the community and the people who will benefit from it. Jeff was vital to keeping the community involved, informed, and engaged every step along the way. But first, for the community, this project meant a lot of construction work for years. For years, this was an ongoing symphony of workers and equipment, carefully timed and thoughtfully executed. Managing all of that beautifully was Grace O's, the project's vice president. Grace, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thanks. Excited to be here.
So why don't we start? Why don't you tell me, what was your initial introduction to the RPM project?
Yeah, so way back in 2015, I had the opportunity to work on what at that time was a planning project that, had an uncertain future. We were, moving forward with our plans, but we didn't yet have the funding secured. They had done a vision study way back in 2009. So when I say that I've been on the project a long time, there's people at CTA who've been on the project since 2009, working hard to make this a reality. But then in the summer of 2016, we were able to secure the approval for the transportation TIF, which was critical for our local funding. And then by January of 2017, President Obama was signing the FFGA for RPM Phase 1.
Wow, so tell me a little bit about going from being in the planning phase to now working in the real on-site active construction and kind of the trajectory of all that.
Yeah. I'm so lucky to have been on the project for that amount of time, because in the beginning with planning, right, we had some time, right, to really look at other mega projects and learn from those projects and take best practices and see what CTA had done in the past, what had worked for us and what hadn't worked for us. We are kind of a legacy rail system, so we're not cutting edge, right? We're not a new system. We're not light rail. So some of what works for other mega projects wasn't going to work for CTA, right? We had to work with the existing rail car fleet we have and make sure that we were able to do this project in a way that it was built adjacent to in-service tracks, right, maintaining service. So during the planning phase, we really set the project up for success, right? We mitigated risks like acquiring the necessary real estate. We did a approach for CTA, advanced utility relocation, and that was critical as well because utility conflicts and delays are notorious for delaying mega projects, right? And really costly. So we got all of that out of the way. And just having the time to think about the project and how we wanted to execute it and really focus on our goals was something unique, because a lot of times in construction, the planning part happens and then, you're in the bid phase, right? And you didn't really have much to say. So really a great opportunity for us to think about the project and get in a place that we had mitigated most of the risks of this project.
Yeah, no, so many years in planning go into that. So,
Yeah.
so in the role you're currently in, that you just completed the project in as the vice president
Yeah.
of the project, can you give me a sense, what was a typical day in those final years of what the project looked like?
Our team directly from CTA is about 16 people. So we're working together outside of CTA headquarters up at a field office where we're co-located with the design builder, right? And that's something we had wanted to do on the project and really felt like had value to us. So I'm there with a team, right? And we're looking at issues currently in the field. There's a lot of meetings. That's what people will tell you about mega projects, a lot of meetings. But we're working through those issues. We're kind of forecasting ahead to the access we need to get the work done. And then touching base with all the departments back here at headquarters to make sure they understand what's upcoming and how they can support the project. Because without their support, we would have never gotten where we are today.
Yeah, and tell me about that team, the 16 people. Who's on the team and what are their roles?
We kind of broken up among construction, engineering, and then what we call the softer side of things, which is more like communication and government and community relations. So we brought together, a really great team with expertise, and we were able to dedicate and focus on the project. And part of being away from headquarters, right, allows you to really solely focus on the project. Whereas, if you're here, right, other things can take your attention, right? And we really felt, given this project and given the commitments and the goals of the project, that we needed a focused team. So we're working together, kind of, we call it left brain, right brain kind of stuff, but always driving towards these same goals we have on the project, which, a lot of them you talked about, increasing capacity. Number one goal on the project, right, is to increase capacity and then bring accessibility, right? Once we got the federal funding to unlock the core capacity grant, right, we were able to then get the dollars to modernize the system and bring accessibility to 4 new stations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that modernization of our legacy system is one of the really powerful aspects of this project. I think that and the accessibility and then just the actual beauty of these stations. But can you talk a little bit about the significance of that and what made this unique and how that played into the work? You were not just building from the ground up.
Right.
You're taking 100-year-old infrastructure that we're still trying to run service on through the middle of the neighborhoods. I mean, to listeners, this is the elevated, as they picture it, the beautiful elevated winding through neighborhoods that's beautiful, but it's right up against buildings. So it's highly complex. So share a little bit about how that played into the work.
Yeah, so one thing, some people know about the project is that our design builder, Walsh Floor, brought a alternative technical concept with the segmental box girder system, right, as the new structure. And so we had a gantry up there, and that allowed us to work in these tight, constrained areas, right, really efficiently. We brought in segments from Morris, Illinois. They drove them in, and the gantry then installed those segments, all while maintaining adjacent service, right? We operated on 2 tracks. We closed the permanent stations and we opened temporary stations. And customers, dealt with, instead of 4 stations, 2 stations. But we were able to maintain near service levels prior to the project through effective phasing and, planning in advance. Again, CTA came up with the staging of the project. So.
And these years that you covered through this project, that was through the COVID pandemic. So can you share a little bit about how that impacted the team and the work you were doing?
Yeah. I think some stuff as the project goes on becomes more like legend and kind of like it's got a long history, but COVID was a difficult time, right? There was a lot of uncertainty when it first started, right? If we would even be able to continue with the project or if the project would go on hold for some period of time. But we were able to continue working for the most part, and we adapted to the remote work. In a lot of ways, it opened us up to new possibilities that have been beneficial outside of the COVID period, right? We're more open to people working remotely, and that really opens up opportunities for more people to work on the project, right? And we can get expertise, on the East Coast and the West Coast, and we don't need people to come to Chicago to work effectively. And the contractor kept going, right? The field forces were out there continuing work, and we were able to take advantage of some lower ridership periods and do some additional track access occurrences that really accelerated some of the work. Even though things were a little slower, right, we got to regain some of the time we lost because of COVID by providing the contractor with better access to the work due to low ridership during the height of COVID.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about on a project of this scale, that the remote work allowed other voices that you probably wouldn't have gotten if it was the traditional concept locally focused.
Yeah.
And also, it's making me think about an asset to the project is that CTA never stopped, and I think people forget about that because most of the world shut down in a certain way. But
right.
we never stopped running service, and it probably just created a culture across different projects of we're not stopping.
Yeah,
at CTA, we're
right.
just going.
I think that's there, right? Like transit essential, right? That we were able to keep going. I don't know much about other projects if they had substantial, delays or shutdowns, but really there was very little, office staff started to work from home, but field work was able to proceed, with necessary precautions, right? We implemented certain precautions, and Walsh Floor and our construction manager, they really adapted and kept going through it all. Yeah.
And can you share, Grace, just going back, I know we started at the project itself, but tell us a little bit about your background, what brought you to CTA, and your life before CTA.
Yeah, so I worked for a while at as a consultant at what was Department of Construction and Permits at the time, right, doing building permits. I had gone to undergrad for civil engineering at U of I, and I had graduated in a time that the construction industry does have up and down cycles to it. So I had graduated in 2002. It was a difficult time in the economy, so I couldn't really land the exact job I wanted. I had worked in CPS in the schools for a while, part-time, and then had gotten this job working on building permits, and I learned a lot about, the city and the agencies and permitting. And then in 2008, I had the opportunity to apply for a job at CTA, and it was a big change. I think in the initial months when I joined, I said, why did I trade what I had, which was a very clear 9-to-5 kind of job for a job where you could get calls in the middle of the night. I remember telling, my bosses at the time, I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. I'm not sure I have the right personality for this type of job. And they assured me, like, all kinds of people can do these things, and like you don't have to be a type A personality to be successful in it. And they showed me I got to interact with a lot more people and get more comfortable. And I still, some of the early experiences at CTA are most memorable to me, right? Had the greatest impression. And I remember feeling unsure of myself, and I reflect back on that, and I think about that when new people start, just how hard it is to start to learn something new, how you feel like everyone knows more than you. And I do try to reinforce to young people, right, like you're still learning. It's okay, because you're still learning, right? You're gaining the knowledge to get better at this job, and you're not doing a bad job, right? I think there's a lot of self-criticism and things like that go along with the job. It certainly has been a great career. I love working at CTA. I love the people I work with. I've had incredible opportunities here. Like, I don't know that I would have had the same opportunities had I gone into the private sector. For me, like, it's been the best choice. So, really.
Yeah, that's great advice from that initial manager. that you don't have to be a particular personality. I think sometimes in an agency like ours, or in a lot of places, you think there's one way to be, and getting that advice to just be yourself in it is so valuable. Is there some other good advice you feel like you've gotten over the years that's been really valuable to you?
Oh, another time, a lot of people in construction really are up early, right? And they're at the office early, 6:37, right? And I couldn't do that. And I said something to the boss at the time. I said, I can't get here early. And he's like, that's okay. How many of these people are getting kids out the door to go to school or making lunches? Like, I'm okay with you getting here when you get here, which was closer to 8:30 or 9. And it just let me release that guilt, right? Like, to know that he didn't think I should be there earlier. So I really appreciated that, and that has stuck with me. Some of the best advice really is about, personal stuff, right? I think when people share their own experience with you, there's so much to gain, like caring for elderly parents, caring for young children. Like, you feel like a shared experience, and that maybe you're doing okay with whatever you're dealing with. So a lot of willingness to share about your own personal life really is helpful to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're a woman in a traditionally male environment in terms of construction. And can you talk a little bit about that and what it means to you?
Yeah. I think initially, too, when you're young, for good reasons, you're maybe not so cynical, or you're maybe more optimistic. And I think when I was younger, I thought something was really special about me, that I wanted to go into these male-dominated fields, well, I'm different from other women, and I want to do it. Reflecting back, it's more like there's barriers to it, and people aren't exposed to opportunities that they might be interested in. Knew a civil engineer when I was growing up, and I kind of got to see the role he had, and I said, that's what I want to do, right? And had I not been exposed to that, I'm not sure I would have picked it. I might have picked like nursing or something in the medical field. But it is a challenge to be in it, but I think what's helping now is like more acknowledgement of how it is challenging. I know that sometimes it's kind of like, oh, pretend there's not this issue, right? Just deal with it and pretend it's not there. But I feel more acknowledged and supported as for that challenge, right? But we still see it, right? I can be in a room, and it can be, a room full of 8 other people, and I may be the only woman in that room. And I see it. I don't ignore it. I think with age and experience comes like kind of a willingness to not worry so much about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this project has been historic in terms of the women on it in many respects, in addition to your role. Can you tell us a little bit about the women leaders on your team over its time?
Yeah, it certainly, I never was a goal or a mindset for us to have a strong presence of women. It just kind of naturally evolved from it. And then I do think one thing you will see is like sometimes what I find very helpful is when CTA puts forth a diverse team, you can see that reflected back in the team that comes to work with us, right? And so we did see a lot of women in the design, right? It is a design build project, and it's led by a lot of women for design. And I think over 50% of CTA's team are women. So it's really something special. Again, like it kind of just evolved that way and has been like a really bright spot in the project.
Yeah, and now that it's reached this point and looking back, I think it feels like it was easy breezy to get through, but I'm sure that's not what it was like through this period. How do you get through kind of some of the trickiest moments in a project that has that long of a time frame, and maybe where it seemed like something wasn't going to go right, and how do you manage through that?
It definitely, was a challenging project and had difficult moments. But I think one thing is when you've dealt with, there's always something in construction to deal with, right? And so having the mindset of, how are we going to address this problem? And we have the skills to, meet any challenge, really. COVID, right? Nobody could have really predicted or wasn't on our radar at all. And then you say to yourself, there are people, you're a team, and the skills come together to meet the challenge of that day, right? Whatever it may be, whether it's an issue in the field or coordination with another agency, right? Really having the skills and the confidence in your team to meet those challenges, and realize that problems, are going to occur no matter what. Mm-hmm. And you just really have to keep moving forward, right? And that's the key, is to keep the forward progress and not get stuck. Oh, not another problem, or why won't these issues just go away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great way to put it, and to kind of have that mantra that we have the skills to meet any challenge. I really like how you put that, because I think that's the truth about CTA, and it's complex and there's a lot going on. So there's going to be challenges, but when you've got the team to do it, you can be confident in it.
Yeah, and that's the working as a team, and that environment for me, for CTA, and what we bring together. Like one of my favorite parts is to go when we're going to do a track access occurrence, right, and rail ops is going to alter service so we can get some work done, is to go and hear the rail service bulletin read, right? All the teams come together, right? We read what we're going to do. We're all on the same page. And time and time again, people step up to that challenge and really execute things. And it's a great part to see. It's inspiring, right? And like time and time again, this agency's been able to step up and like move forward, even when there are challenges.
Do you feel like working on construction in a public service atmosphere like this is different? I imagine it is, right? Just hearing you tell that story about the rail service bulletin, because you're not just building something.
Yeah.
You're building something while we're giving this vital service to millions of people all the time. So it just creates this kind of energy of service and commitment, and kind of stepping up to deliver in a way that I think would be different on maybe a different kind of project.
Yeah, I think, right, like our goals on projects enable us to, care about our riders, care about the community, because our goal, while we want to be on budget and on time, right, the goals that drive us are, making sure that we're treating people fairly, right, and expanding capacity, and like providing reliable service and fast service and things like that. So those are goals I feel strongly about. And so it's not about money or the bottom line always, which is a difficult goal to have, right? To always be like, we're mindful of our budget, but at the same time, like to have that be the driving force behind a project, to me, is a little bit, profit and things like that, it's a little bit empty. So for me, the goals that we have as an agency really reinforce, things that I think are important.
Mm-hmm. And so what's it been like since the station's open? How does it feel?
It's a little bit of, like you're kind of like giving birth to something, right? Like I think sometimes, right, when things weren't open, you have less logistics to worry about. So now the stations are open, but the feedback and seeing those stations in use is really, it makes it all worthwhile. I will say my niece, she goes to Loyola, and she said to me the other day, there's a station at Lawrence, because she started while the station at Lawrence was closed, and she's back from the summer, and she's just like, there's a station at Lawrence? I was like, yes, there's a station at Lawrence. And that's kind of the excitement from riders and the community, right? Like, I wish every project manager and everyone who works on a project got to experience that, right? Like the reward of like the public excitement is really something different for me. Like I've worked on several track projects where we're removing slow zones or signal upgrades, but the happiness from the customers, we built it for them. We want them to know how important they are to us and how much transit matters. And this project, to me, just really reinforces that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was thrilling, the openings of those stations. I think I'm still on a high from it weeks later. Yeah. And it symbolized so much for the city, and more broadly than that as well. I think of what what can actually happen with massive investment in public transit, even older systems, can be completely transformed.
Yeah.
And, even just the quietness of the trains over those tracks, I still kind of laugh thinking about it. I was there yelling about how quiet it was because it was just, incredible to see, really, I think. And just from where I sit, such a useful tool to say, look at this. If you give us the funding we need, look at what we can do with it. And it opens up the imagination of people, I think, about what's possible with investment in transit. And you talked about your niece, but I imagine it's personal to you too, as someone that's worked so long on these projects.
Yeah.
Do you take your family there and kind of talk to them about it? Can you talk a little bit about those feelings?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they've been my family, my husband and my 2 daughters have been with me along the way on this project, and for them to be part of the opening, like they were out there when we had the special train drive through the banner. They saw the stations. Back in November of 2021, when we put the bypass in service, we rode it together and, looked out the window at what we had built. It's great to share it with them, and it's great to share it with the whole city. I think what's really true is it benefits all Red Line riders, right? We've increased capacity, and everyone's going to benefit from that. Even if you're not boarding at these new nice stations, right? You're going to see more reliability from the operations of trains, right? We've been working through the phased construction for a long time, and the moment we were back in 4-track, ops could really breathe a sigh of relief. And I remember being at Thorndale shortly after we were back with the 4 tracks open, and I was able to watch them route a train around another train that had an issue at the time and keep service moving. And that kind of just struck me as, that's when we function best, when we keep the trains moving, and just really benefits the customers.
What do you hope people feel when they walk through these stations?
Yeah. I really feel like the stations should convey to people that they matter. Like, choosing transit is a choice for many people, and some people depend on transit. Acknowledging that, but I think we can say you matter, but in building these stations and the new infrastructure, we're really showing people that they matter, right? That's really important to me because I ride the system. I think, choosing transit's a great option. I hope more people will choose CTA or, take CTA, but the existing customers that we have really matter to me. I know they're out there riding our system, and I want them to have the best experience they can have.
Yeah, I mean, if people haven't seen these stations, they have to go see them. They're true works of art, and the accessibility components have been some of the most moving parts, I think, for all of us. And seeing advocates and people that work in that field, their eyes well up with tears when they saw that elevator open at the station on the first day is something I will never forget myself.
Yeah.
And just, on so many levels, there's the beauty of these stations, like you say, an invitation into transit overall, and then this incredible statement about what is just and what is right, and access and what people deserve from their transit system and their communities. So It's so powerful. Thank you, Grace. This has been so nice to take some time and talk with you. I know we all get so busy, so nice to take a breath and hear from you and learn about your background and what this project meant to you. Thank you so much for your service to CTA.
Thank you.
Jeff, I mentioned this briefly in my introduction, but I want to dive into the community engagement element of this project. Your work was laser focused on engaging with partners and gaining trust in the community. It's work that you can't really cut a ribbon on, but there isn't a ribbon cutting without it. Tell me about your role on this project.
So as Director of Government Community Relations, it was my responsibility to make sure that staff was engaged with elected stakeholders in the community, from Belmont all the way north to Thorndale, and everybody in between with regards to constituents, the stakeholders, the electeds, and any residents that wanted to be engaged with the Red Purple Modernization projects were engaged with.
And give us a sense, Jeff. I mean, this really uprooted people's lives for an extended period of time. So we're celebrating. It's beautiful. Everyone is so happy. But you, more than many people, Jeff, know the reality of the work it took to get people through from start to finish. Can you give a sense of the scale of the impact on these neighborhoods as we worked?
Absolutely. So in the red purple bypass area, we had to deal with a lot of homeowners that were just had their own home, didn't really engage with CTA, some apartment dwellers who were actively engaged with us because they were CTA riders. That I thought was going to be the hard part because the 44th Ward had a different demographic than the rest of the project area, which was from Lawrence north to Thorndale. In the RPB area, the red purple bypass area, the engagement was literally house by house, apartment building by apartment building. When we started moving up north to Lawrence, the demographic of the community changed drastically, and that demographic changed block by block. So we had to readjust our strategy by engaging with people differently. So we made the partnerships with the stakeholders first, the Chinese Mutual Aid, Southeast Asia Center, the electeds after that, and we got their sense of who we should be talking to within the community and who we should be focusing on. So the lift really came from us and our engagement on the first level with stakeholders and community electeds and constituents that were already engaged with CTA. So the effort was block by block by block by block. We did RPM on your corner, which we took a page from Gabby Giffords, the congresswoman from Arizona. She started her career by doing a congresswoman on your corner. So RPM took from that, and we started doing RPM on your corner, and really just sitting out there doing AM, PM rush periods, sitting there having people come up to us and be engaged with the project. And that was a huge success.
Wow, yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So how frequently were you doing that?
Once a week at the beginning of the project.
Wow.
During the utility relocation process, the impacts were a lot bigger than they were during demolition work, because we had to come in, close streets and sidewalks, dig everything up, install duct banks, disconnect utility, reconnect utility. And when people during Game of Thrones missing out on their TV entertainment, that was a big hit. And so our phones would blow up during cable disconnects. Not electricity, not hot water. It was always with Game of Thrones for some reason. I don't,
Big fans.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the big lift, was
Yeah.
being able to communicate with different languages, different people, different demographics in the Lawrence to Bryn Mawr part on a block by block, and having that RPM on your corner where people could just come up to us and start engaging with us, and then we would create a list of people with their emails and phone numbers, and then just start individually reaching out to them as the project progressed.
Wow. So
It was intense.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of skills do you use to get through that type of information exchange? I mean, it's no secret to anyone that knows you. You have a big personality, Jeff.
Thank you.
You make people smile.
Thank you.
You're hilarious.
Thank
right?
you.
So I imagine that all helps.
It did.
Yeah.
It
so
really, really did.
Can you talk about how you work with people and how you use your own skills to execute it?
I think it really comes down to having respect for people and being able to mentally walk a mile in their shoes if you can, and sit there and say, if I lived at this intersection, if I lived next to this RPM construction project, how would I feel? And once staff and I started putting ourselves in that mental frame of mind and being able to engage with people without having them get angry at us first or not understand what was happening, the respect level of the preliminary engagement really helped with us with the community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Such a simple concept, but goes a long way.
And people don't understand that. They
Yeah.
don't understand once you get down to the street and say, I'm here to talk to you about whatever it is you want to talk about with regards to CTA. It doesn't even have to be RPM.
Right.
It can be anything CTA related. And I think that comfort level of having a chair and a little table on a corner and having people sit down and be like, I don't really have issues with this, but I have issues with this, and still being able to show them the respect that you're listening to them and understanding what their issues are.
And how big was your team? How many people do you have working with you?
So on the GCR team, we had 3 people. It was me at the beginning, Latrice Phillips Brown, who is now the director of government community relations for RLE, and then we had a very, very robust intern program, which I am a huge advocate of. I think the CTA intern program is amazing. And we would take the interns, teach them everything GCR, have them with us in the community, both high school interns and college interns, and just do the engagement. And they loved it. People will do anything for a free T-shirt.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, how do you manage something even I've faced, the translating the construction technical language? I see you as kind of being in the middle of where you're getting information from the construction team with verbiage that people in their regular life would not understand, and then you have to go explain that to a regular person. How do you manage that?
What a great question. What a great question. It takes a long time to sit down with somebody that Grace O's was amazing, being able to sit with her and talk about what these project engineering schematics are, trying to understand what a plinth is, what CTA engineering.
You can't even Google these things. That's what I've noticed.
Exactly. So there were a lot of times just sitting and constantly saying, can you put this in layman's terms? Help me understand as somebody that, let's just say I don't even take CTA and I don't understand how our schedules work. How does that impact me living next to this construction site? Why can't they just stop the trains and do the construction? Explain to me exactly, as if I'm an idiot, how I can explain it to somebody that is really intelligent but doesn't understand engineering.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of engagement with both the construction team for Walsh Floor and their engineers, the CTA engineers that we would sit down as well to try to interpret what the contractor was saying, and then the owner's rep team. And once we had exhausted all that, being able to sit down with the constituent and explain to them exactly what the impacts were going to be and how they could rely on us to get them through it.
Yeah. And why it had to happen that way.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
And not another way.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people were like, I just don't understand why a cable connection, when I don't even have cable, is going to affect me because you've shut down my alley and I can't get access to my car. And how do I get my recycling and garbage bins out, and who's going to pick up all of those things we had to have addressed prior to even meeting with the constituents, because we knew beforehand, like I said earlier, putting yourself into their shoes and saying, okay, I live here, I have a garage, I have a car, I possibly have a 9-to-5 job, I need to get out of my garage, pick up my kids, not pick up my kids, make dinner, all these things, go to the grocery store, and you're digging up something that I don't even understand why. And you're spending all these millions of dollars to do this for whose improvement, and why does this affect me? And being able to explain all that to people and have them get on board and then come to you. One of the most gratifying things is having them come to a community meeting and say, I am more engaged with this project because of the way you and your staff sat down with me and patiently explained to me everything that was happening. We had a lot of cocktail hours with people's condo HOA boards and sitting with people and talking to them while they were taking in libation and trying to understand what we were doing. But that paid off.
Yeah.
Just having that intimacy of being able to make yourself available to meet with condo boards and HOA, homeowners associations, block clubs. There was no meeting too big or too small that we would make ourselves available to. Just to get that engagement and trust and build that trust.
Yeah.
That was huge.
Yeah. And, a lot of what I hear you talking about is kind of relaying plans to people so they understand them. But what about the unexpected? I'm sure there were a lot of kind of emergency, unexpected moments that had to move very quickly. How'd you walk through those?
That's another great. So preliminary engagement with constituents, knowing what the construction project is going to look like a week from now. So we would always sit down with the construction team and say, hey, this is what we understand the project's going to look like a week from now. Is this the course of action you're going to take, and what obstacles do you anticipate happening so that we can have a plan to address those issues? So making the connections with the construction team, the owner's team, the CTA side of the house, just like you and I were talking about, understanding that you could immediately go to this person or this person to understand, okay, they left a crane in front of this person's garage that's not supposed to be there. They dug up the alley before the construction activity notice indicated that they were going to do that, and this person has no idea why they can't get out of their alley. Being able to engage with that person because you've already set up the engagement prior to any construction, so I could immediately email or reach out to constituent X, Y, or Z and say, I'm so sorry. Here's my personal cell phone number. I want to talk to you about what's happening behind your home and then walk you through what we can do to mitigate these issues. That alleviated so many contentious, potentially angry people because they already had your cell phone number and your email address, and you were being proactive with them, saying, I know the contractor just told me that they accidentally did X, Y, and Z. I'm here to help you get through it and compensate you in any way we can.
Yeah, you talked about the intimacy. There is an aspect to your work that's very involved in people's personal lives.
It
and
is.
The details of how they execute their lives 24 hours a day, and businesses, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about how that's kind of not traditional work atmosphere.
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. So a lot of times, a lot of people were running businesses out of their garage, like people with corn elotes, the Mexican corn carts, or they would sell ice cream, or they would be running mechanic shops or bicycle fix-up shops just out of their garage. And we didn't care. That wasn't our role. Our role is to make sure that they were engaged with the project. So being able to earn their trust and say, I'm not here to report you to the city. I'm here to help you understand that we're going to be digging up your alley and that I understand you are doing things in your garage that you may want to relocate temporarily or have CTA be more engaged with you while we're doing this part of it so that you can get back to your normal and have us get out of your way as soon as possible. So again, with the trust building and saying, I'm not looking at this. I just want to make sure you understand what we're about to do so that you don't have to come to me later and have us make accommodations for you based on what you're doing in your garage. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of phone calls to people saying, hey, this is going to happen. This is why it's going to happen. And this is how I'm going to help you. And just having staff and myself be available to people 24/7. I mean, it was a 24/7 project. So you would get calls at 9 o'clock at night and people are saying, hey, tomorrow morning I have an emergency, I'm a nurse and I have to be at Northwestern by 5 a.m. and I didn't get my car out in time. Can you help me? And, at 10 o'clock at night, you're contacting the contractor saying, hey, pause real quick and put a steel plate down to make sure that I can get this car out of the garage and so that they can go to work in the morning or get their kids off to school. That ability to have the connections that you have with the contractor, the CTA team, and communicate that to the constituent that's having this issue, that alone, people were so grateful. And they would communicate that to the elected's office and say, I just want to let you know I had this big issue. I'm not exactly on board with the RPM project, but I want to tell you something. The CTA RPM team really came to help me in my my issue. And it's all about that engagement and being able to talk to people and say, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to be a spy for the city or a report on you. I just want you to be able to help us get you through this massive $2.1 billion construction project. And they loved it.
Yeah.
And they were very grateful.
No, it sounds like really satisfying work. And I mean, tell me a little bit about before this project. That you've been in this field for a long time. Jeff, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I've been at CTA for 24 years now.
Wow.
24, yeah, I know. And when I started at CTA, I used to manage the CTA UPass program for the marketing department. And so when I was hired at CTA, my sole responsibility was to convince schools like UIC, DePaul, Loyola to join the CTA UPass program. And a very smart person that was in the department adjacent to mine that happened to be government community relations said to me, what happens when you've sold all the schools the UPass program and they're on board and you've done your job and you've done it well? What do you do next? And I sat back and was like, I don't know. What do I do? And they're like, you've got a face for government community relations. And I was like, a face for radio and a look for government community, one of those things. But that person convinced me to go into government community relations, and I never looked back. And it was such a fate, divine fate, I think. It was some way that I was just kind of satisfied in the marketing department, and to have somebody come up and say, you're really good at something else, and I think that this is a better fit for you. And I just really enjoyed being in government community relations.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful department to be in, great people, and when you have the passion for the community and passion for CTA, it's easy.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would always say to me, I don't know how you do your job. And I always say, well, how do you argue against public transit? I mean, that just seems silly to me. People come at us all the time and they're like, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. And I said, well, then you should contact your state legislator and say, fund us. That's where it begins. And people understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it requires a ton of energy, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you know more than anybody how much energy you have to spend.
CTA,
Yeah.
I say, is one of the easiest things to be inspired by.
I agree.
And you can be exhausted, but you kind of pop out of bed nonetheless, because it's such important work. I agree. It matters so much, and it's so satisfying. So
I agree.
No, that's so great. I mean, tell me a little bit about the opening of the stations, what that felt like. I mean, I observed you, Jeff, with the people that you had known for years.
That was
just
so much
kind of
fun.
The joy of it and the relationships you had built around every corner. People were embracing you, so excited. And so tell me a little bit about what it felt like.
It was a little embarrassing, to be honest with you, because here I am with my boss, President Leerhsen, and running around and having all these people jump out and grab me. And I'm like, President Leerhsen, this is, Jane, and she's been with us since jump. And
it just showed your work. Showed the relationships you'd built. Yeah.
But it was really satisfying having you there, seeing all these people, because you've been on this journey with us since the beginning, and to have you at the end of this journey in your role was very inspiring to me. And I think it was just wonderful to have you on that platform, knowing where we were at the beginning of the project, to have full circle to come to that point. It was just, I couldn't stop smiling. My face hurt the next day. But also, there's a component that we haven't touched on yet that's really important to me, and that was the accessibility component. And that was first and foremost at the front of your agenda when it came to the stations. Every time we had a meeting and there were impacts to the community, you were always asking me, what are we doing for people in mobility devices? What are we doing for people that can't navigate, construction sites? That was always at the beginning of the conversation that we would have about impacts that were going to be taking place. And that was never lost on us. And it was really important for us to make sure that the disability community was engaged with us. And we made a lot of friends through that connection and that engagement that was very powerful. And to see people utilizing and accessing the stations with mobility devices, being able to go up the escalator and elevator without worrying about stairs and the wider platforms, that's the part that made me smile too. Just having the connection to the people at the beginning of the project that didn't have access, at the end of the project being able to access everything was so heartwarming.
Yeah, it's hard to put words around.
It really is.
Yeah, and just what an honor it is to be associated with an industry that can offer that to people and be part of that story.
100%
is
agree.
so moving.
It is.
And to see Karen Tamley there, Michelle Lee on our board. I thought about Marka Bristow, the former CEO of Access Living, and what she would have thought of these stations.
Absolutely.
And being able to make this statement 4 times over.
Yep.
That it was the scale. You don't get that opportunity a lot. We redo things. We build one station here and there. But to say, here's an accessible station times 4.
Right, exactly.
And take it in one whole stretch.
Right.
You can pick any of them.
Yep.
And the power of that is just
it's
so
overwhelming.
So moving.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point exactly. And it wasn't just the disabilities community. It was parents with strollers that couldn't get up to the platform.
Yeah.
It was senior citizens that weren't able to navigate our system. In that whole section, and you said it, it's 4 stations fully accessible to an entire community that for decades didn't have any accessibility. It's heartwarming, overwhelming to think about and to actually see it. I have been volunteering to do the Argyle Night Market every Thursday, 'cause I love it. But to be able to promote CTA during those events and have people come up to you and say, I've never taken CTA before, but because of your brand new station, I decided to go for a ride and I loved it. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, but I do think personally, Jeff, you've been at the center of kind of this joy of that project, and it was such an honor for me to watch you celebrate that and your decades of service to CTA.
I appreciate that so much.
And, I love these stations still glisten and glimmer 24 hours a day, so it feels like it just goes on.
I agree, yeah.
The joy from it. So I want to thank you so much for all your work on this project.
Thank you.
And for joining us here today on Moving Experiences.
I really appreciate it. This has been very enjoyable. Thank you so much.
As we celebrated the opening of these stations, I kept hearing from riders, "This is my station." That pride was overwhelming and has been something I've reflected on in the weeks since. My hope for this podcast and sharing these conversations is that we strengthen the connection riders feel to our team and to our system. For more stories of the CTA, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast, which you can find on all major platforms. I'm Nora Leerhsen. Thank you for listening.